I am Stefan Wright's contractual lover. I thought we would maintain a tacit understanding of treating each other as guests. But when I was about to leave, he unexpectedly tied me to the bed with a tie. Ding! Wisnovel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. I recklessly intruded into his territory. Stefan Wright furrowed his brows, his hot breath falling on my collarbone, causing me to tremble uncontrollably. His strength tightened, his gaze fixed on my lips as if it could materialize and scorch my soul. From his increasingly unusual behavior, I sensed that something was wrong and immediately started struggling. But even this feeble resistance, in front of a beast on the verge of losing control, was undoubtedly a provocative challenge. He furrowed his brows, impatiently pulling off the tie. I watched helplessly as he used the valuable tie as a rope, without any explanation, to restrain me from his displeasing actions. Mr. Wright, it hurts me. His inappropriate behavior completely shattered my nerves, which had been tense since I entered, and even my voice trembled with fear. But soon, I couldn't make a sound. A seamless kiss descended upon me. Stefan Wright was known for his modesty, but his kiss was completely contrary to his appearance, domineering. Without considering my struggles, he unilaterally attacked and plundered. My breath was chaotic, and the scenery in front of me became blurred by the tears that were stimulated. Thanks to his strength, I avoided falling to the ground in embarrassment. Stefan Wright half embraced me, kicking open the bedroom door, and the last scene left for those outside was him passionately biting my collarbone. Yes, every move of ours was being monitored. These intimate actions were just part of the contract. I glanced at the slowly closing door and finally sighed with relief. Mr. Wright, it's safe now. They shouldn't be able to see us from outside. Perhaps my voice was too soft, as he seemed to not hear what I said. Instead, he gently pulled my wrist towards his lips, leaving one red mark after another. His scorching gaze burned me for a moment, causing me to involuntarily shrink back. He seemed to think that I was still acting, so he pressed me against the bed. I quickly raised my hand to block him, and his wet and hot kiss landed on my palm, causing both of us to tremble uncontrollably. I licked my somewhat dry lips and said, Mr. Wright. It should be all right now. Stefan fell silent for a while before returning to his gentle and humble appearance, completely concealing the person who had just pinned me down. He helped me straighten out my disheveled clothes, his tone filled with indescribable apology. I'm truly sorry for making you act in such a crude play. I shook my head. Stefan is a good person, gentle and modest, and treats others with courtesy. I can hardly find any flaws in him. If it weren't for the pressure from his family to marry me, he would have had better choices. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of guilt. Can I hold you for a while? I'm feeling uncomfortable. I can guarantee that I won't do anything inappropriate. And if you feel uncomfortable, you can push me away at any time. I was stunned until the warmth in my legs became more and more obvious, and then I understood what he meant by feeling uncomfortable. Instantly, my face turned steaming red. I was already feeling guilty, so how could I refuse his small request? Okay. I didn't dare to look at him, so I turned my back to him. A light and elegant fragrance enveloped me from behind, firmly drawing me into his territory. I could feel his warm breath sprinkling on my ear, teasing me to the point where even the tip of my ear turned red. But from beginning to end, he kept his promise and didn't make any inappropriate moves. But then I thought, Mr. Wright, who is so outstanding, should have the freedom to pursue his true love instead of being forced to be with me. I felt a little bitter in my heart. Although I really liked him, I still hoped that this relationship could end soon. Stefan and I are the same age, and his achievements are beyond what any of us can compare to. But he also has a fatal weakness, his mother. A few years ago, the Wright family encountered some problems in their business, and Stefan's mother was greatly affected, causing her to become somewhat confused mentally. Although there has been some improvement after several years of treatment, it left behind some paranoid tendencies. This paranoia is fully reflected in her choice of Stefan's future wife. During Stefan's college years, there was someone he liked very much, which was well known within the company. She was his first and only girlfriend in 20 years. But for various reasons, that girl was sent abroad by Stefan's mother. Since then, he hasn't been in a relationship. But out of so many people of the same age, I don't know why Stefan's mother specifically chose me. I became Stefan's prospective fiancé. I knew he didn't like me, and being with me was only to take care of his mother's condition. After careful consideration, I wrote an agreement and personally handed it to him. I watched his cold expression slowly relax, and finally felt relieved in my heart. It seems that he should be satisfied. You mean that we can have a cohabitation contract, and the agreement will end when either party finds a desired marriage partner? I nodded. I can cooperate with you in hiding this from Mrs. Wright, and I hope you can consider it. Even if it means doing something inappropriate for the sake of cooperation? I was stunned for a moment, feeling a bit at a loss. Indeed, the agreement did not explicitly state that it was not allowed. So, in order to avoid being discovered by Mrs. Wright, perhaps sometimes it is necessary to engage in some intimate actions. But what did he mean by inappropriate? I felt a bit apprehensive in my heart. He smiled and withdrew the agreement. Take it back, I don't agree with this. But almost at the same time, I spoke, it's okay. Because of the excitement, I accidentally bumped into his fingertips. And for a moment, a tingling sensation hit the bottom of my heart. I stuttered, I can cooperate with you, but you need to let me know in advance. There was a sincere smile in his eyes. This is not a fair agreement for you. If possible, can I add something? I watched as he added a line of bold and powerful words at the bottom. Miss Miller cannot be forced to do anything. My heart instantly became restless, and even my cheeks felt a bit hot. Before he noticed, I hurriedly put away the agreement in a fluster. It's okay, let's cooperate happily. He gently clasped my fingertips with his strong hand, and something exploded in my mind like fireworks. And so, we began this secret contractual relationship. At the beginning, we were like unfamiliar roommates. Besides saying good morning and good night every day, we rarely communicated. Later, probably because of concerns for Stefan's mother's emotions, he started to pick me up and drop me off for work. To repay him, I subconsciously tried to find out his preferences and occasionally prepared some surprises for him. With time, we became like-minded friends. But I didn't expect that the time to fulfill the contract with him would come so soon. That day, he seemed a little distracted when he picked me up. I hesitated and asked, "Is it about the contract?" He tightened his hand on the steering wheel and sighed after a long while. "Aviva, I may need you to help me deceive my mother later." My palms started to sweat, and I couldn't help but feel nervous. But I still pretended to be relaxed and nodded. "It's okay, Mr. Wright, this is something we agreed on in advance. I also hope to help you solve some troubles." The atmosphere in the entire car was strangely awkward. And it continued until we pushed the door and returned home, and the strange feeling still lingered. But to my surprise, there was no one in the living room. I couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. It seemed that Mrs. Wright had already gone home, so I shouldn't need to cooperate with him anymore. But suddenly, I heard the sound of the door locking behind me, and I couldn't help but tremble all over. Just as I was about to turn around, Stefan pressed me into his arms. In the blink of an eye, the gentle and courteous person next to me seemed to have turned into a hungry wolf. He held the back of my neck, and his overwhelming kisses instantly engulfed my doubts and struggles. The sexy and cold fragrance filled my nostrils, constantly attacking my nerves. I felt like I was drowning in his kiss, only able to cling tightly to his shoulders. I felt like I had caught a glimpse of a side of Stefan that no one else knew. He was completely different from the gentle and humble person during the day. Every move was an unapologetic plunder. His scorching temperature burnt me, and I couldn't control myself. I let out a terrified moan and tried to break free from him. The force that was suppressing me loosened slightly. He rubbed my hair along the back of my neck, and surprisingly, under his soothing touch, my fearful heart gradually calmed down. He gently touched my lips and covered me tightly behind him. "Are you very scared?" I took 2 deep breaths and shook my already dizzy head. His hand, which was placed on my waist, tightened. "Then I'll continue. I'll carry you back in a while. If you're scared, you can hold on tighter." Before I could digest the information in his words, I felt that my feet were off the ground. Fear was swallowed into his mouth and turned into ambiguous silver threads that intertwined all the way. My whole body stiffened, and even the posture in which he was holding me became awkward. It seemed that Stefan and I had truly become lovers in love, and we couldn't bear to let go even at the door. Finally, he kicked the door, and the ambiguous atmosphere instantly dissipated. He politely helped me button up my shirt and stepped back, then went to the bathroom alone. I stood there in a daze, only then realizing that we were just acting. I stared at the person in the mirror, with a blush on my face and a hint of infatuation unintentionally revealed. It was so embarrassing. Perhaps it was from that moment onwards that I began to violate the agreement and fell into an unforgivable secret love. Stefan is indeed a gentleman. He quickly explained the whole story to me. It turned out that his mother had installed surveillance cameras in his living room. And in order to avoid her discovering anything unusual, he had to trouble me to cooperate with him. I expressed my understanding. While despising myself in my heart, I forcefully extinguished the flames that had just risen. I had to stay in his room overnight. He was very gentlemanly and gave me the bed, while he slept on the floor. I had an indescribable feeling in my heart. In order to deceive his mother, I had to cooperate with him in acting every few days. And as we had more and more contact, I discovered that Stefan was not as easygoing as he appeared on the surface. On the contrary, he was a person with a strong desire for control. For the people and things that were involved in his domain. He always didn't mind putting in more effort to correct them. Coincidentally, I should be considered as being included in his domain. Since then, my occasional indulgence during my period was taken away, and my habits of skipping breakfast and staying up late were gradually suppressed by him. To be honest, I didn't dislike it, but instead enjoyed his different displays of dominance. Every time he closed the door, he would help me straighten my clothes and then go to take a shower by himself. This situation continued until one morning, when he had a high fever. It was only then that I noticed winter was approaching. Even if he had a strong body, he couldn't bear lying on the cold floor after taking a cold shower. For the first time, I seriously objected to his decision. "You will get sick." I pinched his palm, softening my tone a little. He remained silent for a while and sighed. "But it will be uncomfortable this way." My ears turned red, but I was more concerned about his health, so I had to let go of my useless embarrassment. "I can let you hold me for a while and calm down." For the first time, I saw a dazed look in his eyes, and it took him a long time to bend down and laugh softly. "Hold you for a while?" I crashed into his eyes full of laughter, and instantly felt that the courage to say those words had completely burned away. He approached me slowly, constantly confirming with me, and I could only nod. He wrapped me in his arms again, and even his words couldn't hide his laughter. "All right, Aviva." He gently caressed my neck, making me feel restless, but I dared not move, afraid of igniting his desire again. Stefan was like a fish in water in the business world, and he always managed to make me compromise without noticing, making me lower my bottom line again and again. Sometimes I even suspected that it was intentional on his part. But at times like this, he would politely step back as if everything had just been my imagination. For most of this winter, I stayed in his bedroom. I have a cold constitution, but with him by my side this year, my hands and feet rarely felt cold. As winter turned to spring, neither of us mentioned sleeping in separate beds. He was gentle during the day and dominant at night, but every time he closed the door, I felt that he was unintentionally acting cute with me. The so-called cooling-off period became longer and longer. One morning, I even found him still clinging to me. I almost thought he really started to like me. Until that girl came back. That day was the first time I had dinner by myself since I moved here. I had prepared the food and then saw his message in the afternoon, saying that he would go pick up a friend tonight. At first, I didn't think too much of it, thinking it might be one of his business partners or something. But the next day, I ran into him and that girl at the entrance of his company. I immediately recognized that girl, who was as radiant as fire. There were so many beautiful girls around, yet she still managed to stand out. She seemed to be acting cute with Stefan, constantly shaking his hand. Even though I felt that Stefan and I had become quite familiar, I still didn't dare to make such presumptuous moves. But towards the girl, Stefan just sighed, unable to hide his doting gaze. That was when I suddenly realized. Stefan and I were just in a contractual relationship. He agreed to sign that agreement in the beginning because he wanted to free himself and pursue the girl he liked. I turned around and left.